Okay, so I'm going to work on getting this rotary shaft slash water pump shaft pulled here so I can replace the seals. So sometimes if you have an older sled and the bottom end's filling up with oil while it sits, it's very common on two-stroke Ski-doos. You see it after, a machine was about 10 years old. The seals will start to leak, so either you have your two crank seals here, which kind of block off this cavity, or the rotary shaft seal, which is right under here. It will also leak. And then if you have a lot of oil on your rotary shaft plate and the facing here, so basically if there's oil in between here, then you know that the seal is leaking. The other thing is it could create a hydro lock if it's been sitting for a while. So, it could end up bending a rod if you go try to pull it over when the bottom end's full of oil. So what we're going to do, there's a snap ring down in here, so we're going to get that out. And then we have to pull the water pump impeller off. So just a 10mm socket to get that nut off. And then you're going to need, I'm just going to use some needle nose pliers to basically go into these holes just to hold this impeller from spinning when I go to take that nut off. And then we're going to need to use a puller to pull the shaft. So I'm probably just going to go with a socket that goes over top here that this will fit inside of, and then this just has threads in here. So I believe it's just a standard 6mm by 1.25 pitch bolt with a nut, and we're just going to work on using that to pull this out. If I can find my proper tool, I'm going to use that, but I don't think I know where that is. It's been quite a few years since I pulled a rotary shaft, so the big 36mm socket usually does the trick for me. So I'm going to get the camera set up, and then I'm going to get to pulling this apart. So I believe there's two seals in behind here, and then you have the one seal on the rotary plate side. So I'm going to get set up and start getting to work. Okay, so we're gonna get this bottom end together. So I've gone ahead and I've cleaned all the case surfaces. So I used a razor blade, which scraped all the old case sealer off. Then I took some 400 grit sandpaper on a steel block so it was nice and smooth, and I decked it. Took all the remainder residue off. Then I sprayed it down. I washed it in the Varsal tank, and then I sprayed it all down with brake clean. Blow dried it off with the airline. Going to be using this 518 case sealer. It's an anaerobic sealant. It's kind of like red Loctite, but a lot gooier. You can use this, or you can use 3-bond, which a lot of guys use. But I have good success with this. I've always used this when I was rebuilding 50 Ski-doo motors every year. This is what I used. This is for more two-stroke applications than four-stroke. But like I said, I built a few hundred of these Rotax motors, mainly Ski-doos, but the same concept with a Ski-doo motor. So this works great. Never had any problems with it. You don't want to go too heavy with it because you don't want it oozing out everywhere where you compress it. So I like to put it on the bottom case half so that I can just lower it on. I don't have to worry about trying to go all the way around here when the crank is in place, or putting it on here, putting the crank in, and then it gets all over the crank. So I've got my new seal. I've put some grease in around on the double lip seal here just to keep it from tearing. It goes on a little bit easier onto the crank. So one thing that you want to do is these bearings have little pins in them, and there's little recesses here in the case. So what I do is I line them all up, and then I'll lift the crank into place, and I'll just slowly rotate until they get lined up with the recesses. Now there's a little, almost like a washer here, which goes into two little grooves, one on each side here. And then you want to line your crank seals up in their respective grooves here. And then same with the crank seal. You want it to be lined up in the grooves as well. So if you get that in and everything's not quite lined up properly, the pins, you can take a screwdriver or a pick and just kind of push the pins down until they're seated down properly. Just work your way all the way around. And like I said, it's important that you get your oil seals lined up in the grooves too here, so that way everything is seated properly and seals properly. All right, so that looks good. Now this engine here, we're not doing a mag seal on it at this point in time, just because it has its own little plate at the end that the seal goes in. So we're going to be pressing out the old seal out of here, putting the new seal in. So that just slides on over the crank once you have the cases together. Okay, so next up, again, I've done the same prep for the bottom half of the case as the top half. So I'm just gonna go around with my sealant. Just gonna be not go too crazy with it. Like I said, you don't want it oozing out everywhere, especially inside the engine, all over your bearings and everything. So you don't need to go too crazy all in here, because this is an area that doesn't matter. Same with on your mag housing. I mean, you do want to put some on there, but it's not critical to have a perfect amount on here, just because there's no, you don't have to worry about it sucking air into the crankcase, because everything is sealed from here over. So once you distribute this where you think is good, you're just going to go around with your finger, kind of just smooth it all out, level it all. Get it where you didn't apply it when you're first putting it on. And you can kind of feel when you're dragging your finger along the different height of it, so you can get a good feel for leveling it out. It's easier to use your bare hand than have a glove on, just so you can get that feeling of it. You know that it's nice level when you're done. This stuff does squash down very thin, so like I said, you don't need to put a huge amount on. It's the same with 3-bond. But like I said, I prefer to use this stuff over 3-bond. I don't know why, I always have used it, and I'm just used to applying it. So the other thing is, when it comes to cleaning the cases, I think if you ever have to take them apart in the future, this does clean up a little bit nicer. The other thing is, back in the day here, this is actually what the factory used when they assembled these things brand new. So another reason why I like to use it is I like to keep things original from what the factory was, the reason why they used that. So yeah, we'll just keep with that. So again, just nice and even all over. You don't want to get much in where the bearing surfaces are, just because it will take up a bit of clearance, and you don't want You don't want it squashing into your bearing. So, and if you find that you do need a little bit more, just, you know, squeeze a bit more out. Don't try to spread it too thin that you get everything. If you find that you didn't put enough on initially, then just get your tube and squeeze a bit more. So you don't want to have any spots where you can see the metal, just because then that could be too thin, and that could cause an air leak internally inside your motor. So, which is definitely, you don't want that. You don't want it sucking air and taking out a bearing or your piston, causing engine damage. So, anyways, I think that's pretty good there. A few little spots there that are inside the bearings. Okay, I think I got everything. This light's kind of playing tricks with my eyes here. And then again, because this has a rotary valve, you don't want to go too crazy here, because it will squish all out onto the face of where the rotary plate rides. So you'll end up having to clean all that off, or else it'll make a mess of the rotary plate. So. Okay, that looks good. I like that. So we're gonna flip it over very gently. We're gonna place it down to where it needs to rest. Now this engine does not have any locator pins on the cases. Some engines do. Sometimes you have to give them a little bit of a tap with a hammer just to get the pin to seat. Like I said, this doesn't have one, so you don't have to worry about that. Okay. So next we're going to go ahead and install all the crankcase bolts. If you're wanting to wonder about torque pattern, sometimes the cases actually have numbers on them as to the sequence to torque. If you don't have a manual to go by, general rule of thumb is to start in the center and work your way out in a crisscross pattern. So I always like to put just a little bit of case sealer on the threads here. Kind of works like Loctite. And it also kind of seals it in. So we're just going to squeeze a little bit out here. Dump them in. Get them started by hand, so that way you don't cross thread anything. Probably don't need quite that much what I just put on there, but so there's different length bolts, different style bolts in this bottom end, so you know you want to kind of be mindful when you're taking things apart. So first we start off with all of these cap bolts, 6 of them, and then for this hole here we use these hex with flanges. These bolt holes are down a little bit more in the case, so these are just a little bit shorter than what all these ones were, so you don't want to mix those up, because obviously if you put the longer ones in the other holes, they're not going to tighten down for you. So and then we have some smaller ones for on the outside of the case here, so 6 of them in total. What do you think, Henry? So again, don't need much on the threads. And then we have some small 5mm bolts to round it off here, which are holding the magneto housing side. Okay. So like I said, I like to just start them in the threads by hand. That way I know nothing's going to get cross-threaded. And then I'm going to use a impact gun just to snug them down. I'm not going to go crazy because they do need to be torqued. So obviously we don't want to, over torque things. So my helper here, he's quite the suck. He likes to be up here on the bench working with me when I'm here. And then these are, use 11mm socket for these. Okay, so everything's started. So I'm gonna get the impact gun here. I'm gonna go in crisscross, starting from the center. So like I said, just gonna snug them down. So next we're going to grab the torque wrench. Very important that we torque these. So I got my spec book here. So I'm looking up 96 Formula SLS, and Summit 500 is the same. So the 6mm bolts, which are the little small ones here on the magneto, they're going to be at 9 foot-pounds. And then the 8mm bolts, which are all the rest of them, are 21 foot-pounds. So I'm going to start with, I like to usually step it up. So I'll do, if it's 21, I'll probably do about 10 to 15 foot-pounds first, go all the way through, and then go up to the 21 foot-pounds. Okay, so got that set to 12. Got my 6mm Allen key socket here. And then we're going to step it up to 21. So I'm not going to worry about the two small bolts right now that are on this end here. I'll just go and do those after. Alright, so I'm just gonna run through again just to make sure everything's good. Make sure we didn't miss anything. Those are all seeming good. Switch to the 11mm socket. Got these last two here. Those are good, and then all we have to do is we'll just cinch down these right here. And that is probably enough there. I don't even know if I can go down to 9mm or 9 foot-pounds on this. Oh, I can look at that. It starts at 5, so. So there's 9 right there. And there we go. Bottom end is together. So I just got to put the water pump cover on. One thing that you can do to make it easier is get some 2x4s or something to raise up, so that way your connecting rod's kind of hanging down. Keeps it flat. You can see how thin my case sealer was, and yet it's still squeezed out. It's not bad. It's a little bit thick here, so all you're just going to do is use your finger, come along, just kind of get it into the crack there, and just keep wiping it off until there's nothing left. So like I said, that will gum up the rotary plate, so you don't want to have to worry about that. So. You don't want to use a brake cleaner or anything to clean this off, just because it could destroy your seal right here that you just did sealing these cases. So just do your best to get everything out. And then just rotate the crank, make sure everything feels okay. Your rotary shaft is spinning freely. So next thing we're going to do is get the seal put in for the mag side on the carrier there. Get that installed and continue on with the motorboat. Okay, so the way I'm going to take this seal out is I'm going to get a socket, fits inside here. I'm just going to pound it out until the seal comes out. You could also use a screwdriver, pop it out, or pincher bar, but I don't want to damage the housing, so it's the easiest way to do it. Seal it out. So I'm just going to give this a good clean here. Try to get most of the residue out of here. Paper towel, and I'm just going to hit it with some brake clean. So there's a little bit of corrosion on here, just, I mean, it is a almost 30-year-old sled. So I'm just gonna take some, just try to scrape all that off. You just want to be careful you don't damage the mating surface, because your seal does have to go in here. Seal it fairly tight. I just want to kind of get all this powdery corrosion out of here. And wipe it out. Just get some brake cleaner and give her a squirt. Compressed air. push it in with my fingers if I can. At least get it started if we can't do it with our fingers, and then you can use the old seal on top. Just kind of work your way around. Let's make sure everything's going in straight. You can also use a press if you have one. Just keep checking it, making sure everything's going in nice and straight, nothing's getting damaged. So you don't want to have damaged seal here, else it'll suck air and blow the motor on the mag side. Okay, I'm gonna go take that over to the press and press it the rest of the way.